It's going to be a lot of sex, a lot of PS4.
Jesus.
Yeah, right. Who with?
I think you're playing it wrong, Vince. I think you're playing it wrong.
No, it feels good. I shoved the vibrating controller up my ass. And,
oh, no, you're playing it right.
Yeah.
And there's their intro. Minisode.
Watch out!
Here it comes.
Watch out!
Here it comes.
Watch out!
I wonder how many complaints we're going to get over that intro. Yeah, I don't care.
No one's listening anyway.
2 downloads last week, that's all.
I don't know if you guys caught the news early last week, I think it was. Actually, no, late last week. Interesting developments in LA with the Clippers, actually, with Steve Ballmer demoting Doc Rivers from the front office to focus on coaching. I'll just read the quote quickly. He goes on to say, I've owned the team for 3 years now, and I really better understand what an owner's responsibility is. And it turns out that running a franchise and coaching are two enormous and different jobs. The notion that one person can fairly focus on them and give them all the attention they need isn't the case. To be as good as we can be, to be a championship franchise, we need two functioning, strong people building teams out beneath them.
Oh, I think he's right. I mean, Coach Rivers' exemplary record in the playoffs. Maybe he should be focusing on coaching.
I saw it as Ballmer just going, you suck as a GM, and I don't like the fact that you signed your son to like a $45 billion contract. Stick to coaching, and
I do feel like Ballmer at least like has his ear around the league and like at least listens to the rumblings that's going on. Like I do kind of feel like maybe in some way this is in part of the reports that were out there that Chris Paul was a little bit ticked that Doc wouldn't pull the trigger on the Melo deal because of to involve moving his son. Like, I don't know to what extent, but at least I feel like he's aware of that stuff going on with his team. I mean...
Yeah, I agree. His ears would have perked up with the feedback that other GMs and other people and the rumblings and the reports in the media about that particular trade. For him to be... having that happen under his nose and not doing anything about it, it's about, I think it's about time. It's a good move from him.
I mean, because if he's sitting back and assessing his team end of the year, essentially, he lost his franchise player this year, really.
Yeah, but he's old.
Well, but you know what I mean? I mean, that's not a good thing. That's not a good look. And do you feel like because of that dual role from Doc Rivers that maybe hampered the Clippers over the past 3 years, let's say?
Oh, I don't know if it hampered them. They won a lot of games, and I think injuries hurt them a lot too. Chris Paul kept getting injured in playoffs, and Blake Griffin was belting trainers and hurting something on his bloody body. I think that hurt him a fair bit. I love JJ Redick, and he's just turned himself into a really good NBA player, but I'm just was never a fan of him starting at the 2 guard for them. I always thought he should come off the bench and they should find someone else. But it's just injuries more than anything, I think.
I went back and listened to a couple of shows that we did, like sort of towards the playoffs, and the one thing that kept popping out, at least the past 2 previous playoffs that we mentioned, Vince, was just their lack of any sort of real depth on the bench.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like that always... I mean, just 2 or 3 more solid pieces on that bench, I think it changes the outcome for a lot of series for the Clippers. But, I mean, I haven't heard a peep from Doc Rivers' camp.
Because the guy who's taking... I think it's Lawrence Frank. He and Doc Rivers get along great. So that's a positive for the Clippers. He has been with Doc everywhere.
Boston...
Do we know if Doc... how much of a part he played in the Chris Paul trade and what came back to them? Because, if we're knocking what has been a massive lack of depth from the Clippers, I mean, man, that's his last trade or the last thing that he had anything to do with. He stacked that bench.
I feel like that was more Chris Paul.
Yeah, but I thought he was unrestricted. Didn't he orchestrate a sign and trade?
He did. That's what I mean. Like, I don't feel like it was... Like, Chris Paul didn't have to tell Houston to give up anything.
No. I just mean that he didn't have to leave the Clippers with anything either. He could have just packed his bags and up and left. And I think somebody obviously got involved and orchestrated this sign and trade. I don't believe that Chris Paul would have had the star power to have done that. Do you?
I don't know. I kind of feel like that was... Maybe I've been reading the reports wrong, but I kind of was left with the impression that it was, like his final assist to LA, like he didn't need to send players back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I guess. I just kind of thought that maybe Doc had a part in that, or there was, not necessarily bad blood between them, and they orchestrated to get that back. And I thought that, finally, and it's probably too little too late, but finally Doc did a move in his role.
Yeah.
And that stacked the bench, which is something that they really could have needed the last couple of playoff runs, and ironically they get it in the trade of their franchise point guard.
Yeah. No, maybe you're right.
Speaking of point guards,
Oi.
how about that Lonzo Ball?
Oh, come on.
Championship winning Lonzo Ball. MVP winning Lonzo Ball.
Oh, my God.
That's great.
That's not...
Hey, how's the new Lakers facility?
It's pretty good.
I didn't see my photo up there yet, but I'm sure it's coming.
I'm sure it's coming.
I almost tagged you guys in a I think it was a Sports Illustrated thing today about the trades that should happen but won't because of untradeable contracts, and the one that they shat on the most was your boy Parsons. It was great.
Fuck. See, this is the problem,
So
Stu.
good.
This is the problem. Here we are having a nice conversation to start the show off, and you guys start throwing shade and mentioning the C word around me. Okay? Not good enough.
It's hysterical. They were hypothesizing about being able to trade
that guy, man.
Omar Esik, Luol Deng, all these immovable contracts, and of all of them, Parsons is immovable.
I hope his new girlfriend chokes him out.
Oh, kinky. Mate, he's going to bounce back this season.
Shut up.
Can we make a deal here? If he can average 16 a game, will you buy his jersey?
Fuck no. Let's swap. I'll swap for Deng. We'll swap for Luol Deng.
Done. I'd do that.
Fuck. Oh, mate.
Oh, yeah, I'll do that deal.
Yep, let's do that. Fuck that guy. Jesus Christ.
I don't understand
Anyway.
why you hate him so much.
Anyway, let's move along because no Kyrie Irving trade yet. Dan Gilbert sitting on the fence. I mean, it's getting
Good
a little...
segue.
Look, let's talk about Kyrie Irving because I thought a deal would have been in place by now. Obviously, it feels like a weird game of chicken between these two. Dan Gilbert's come out earlier last week and said that he expects to see Irving at training camp. Obviously, we had the we seen the signing of Derrick Rose over to Cleveland as well. It's going to be a very awkward locker room if Irving's still there. At the start of training camp.
He's not going to be there. He'd jump on a plane and go to Latvia. He's not going to be there.
You don't reckon?
No.
It's going to be interesting. I don't know why they don't pull the trigger on that deal with Phoenix.
Did you see Griffin came out today and supported Kyrie's decision and why, the stance that he's taken and unfollowing them and all that sort of stuff?
Oh, yes, I did catch a little bit of that. What was the words he said?
He just said, why beat around the bush? Why go into training camp pretending like you're okay with this? And why play a season out acting like you're all in when you're not? And he said, like a lot of guys do, and they hoodwink teams into believing that they're staying. He's putting it out there. He is moving on. He's checking out, and he wants to focus on the next part of his career. And he kind of gave him a lot of credit. I think it was a bit of a shady stab at Dan Gilbert and, look at the castle for the last time before it crumbles to the ground. But yeah, he's gone, and they have to move him before training camp.
Yeah, didn't he say that it was a brave move? I think that was the word.
Yeah, he backed him 100%.
Yeah, he did, really did.
Kyrie is a bitch. and you know what, Steph Curry?
Oh, you didn't like the wedding thing?
I didn't like that wedding thing at all.
Really?
Especially on Kyrie's part.
Right. Just the poor form.
This is a guy, you're taking the piss out of a guy who helped you win a championship. Yeah, you hit the fucking shot, I know, and I'm the first one to get on LeBron for not taking these shots, but without LeBron, he doesn't have a championship ring. And to do that, and if you've got a fucking problem playing in his, let's say, shadow, instead of acting like a bitch and an spoiled little, I won't swear anymore because he pisses me off. But how about, like I said to you today, I think it was today, why don't you just fucking sit down with LeBron and say, this is my problem. I think we should start to transition it in my team and see what happens. LeBron might turn around and go, you know what, that's all good. Just talk it out. If it doesn't work, then say, well, if we can't come to an agreement, I'm out.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree with you in the sense of, look, I didn't take too much away from it. I thought it was a bit of fun. I mean, yeah, look, maybe a bit of poor form on Irving's part, considering the situation he's put himself in. Totally agree with you. As far as, like, the sitting down and having that conversation, I mean, who's to say this hasn't been going on behind closed doors? Like, maybe he's just ready to get on with it and doesn't want to be there, and maybe it's just a bad situation. I mean, all these players coming out criticising, like Ron Harper coming out and criticising Irving. I just thought, like, the fuck are you, Ron Harper?
Oh, I'll tell you who fucking Ron Harper is.
Tell me the fuck he is.
Fucking bling and fucking Kyrie Irving, that's for sure.
Mate, I just feel like...
And he's a guy who, when he was actually past it, decided to fucking become a support player and win three bloody titles.
Irving's not past anything, though, so that argument's out the fucking window.
No shit. Ron Harper said it perfectly. He's just said what everyone else is thinking. Fuck Kyrie Irving, man.
Man, fuck you. Whatever.
Don't tempt me, Wayne, because I will fucking fly up there and I will humble you till the cows come home.
Mate. Let's not make promises we can't keep, okay?
It's not a promise. It's a fact.
Whatever.
We're about to get the censor. I feel like a kid and my parents are fighting.
Shut up, Benson.
You ain't doing shit.
I'll turn this podcast around.
Oh, God.
I think you have. Listen, I think they're both playing Dan Gilbert. I think LeBron and Kyrie are fine. I think it's blown out of proportion. I think they're playing it. I think that this is absolutely orchestrated. I think that Kyrie knows that LeBron is gone at the end of the season, so Kyrie's forcing his way out now rather than later.
Yeah, he's just getting out first.
He's splitting them up. He's splitting them up in the market, and they're going to just slowly leave the Cavs. That's all this is.
Like, do you not feel that way as well, Vince? Do you not feel like this is just Irving getting out before LeBron bounces
He knows
anyway?
LeBron's gone. He knows LeBron's gone. He's getting out.
I know he does. So why not just... LeBron would have come into this season all in trying to get to the finals again. Geez, what's the worst that could happen? You get to the NBA finals, you actually win a championship, or you lose. At least you had a shot. And then, LeBron's gone. It's going to be your team anyway.
But, I mean, don't you feel like that's...
You'll only win 30 games and you'll average, 30 points and no assists. What the hell?
Nah, he doesn't want that team.
Doesn't he want to be the man on the team?
See, I'm not even buying it. I just think he's looking for a fresh start. He knows LeBron's bouncing. He just wants to get out first so he's not left with Dan Gilbert, who we've talked about, man, has a fucking massive problem with Irving for some reason.
But you say Gilbert's got a problem with Irving. But, I mean, you hear all the stories that Irving fucking parties his ass off. And, granted, he's never come to practice under the weather or late or anything. But Gilbert's paying this guy millions of dollars and he's partying all the time.
You don't think he's produced for him, though? I mean, I don't know how you can say that when you got a guy like J.R. fucking Smith on the team.
I think it's expected of J.R. I mean, you know what you get with J.R. Smith.
True.
I don't know. Maybe it's that. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but I don't know. I'm just disappointed.
I was going to say, you come across sounding like you're just a bit disappointed in Irving.
Yeah, I am. And that wedding thing really pissed me off. And I'm not even a fucking Cavs fan, but that really pissed me off because it's something I would never do to a teammate. And I know I'm not
ex-teammate.
Millions of dollars. I'm not playing for millions of dollars and shit, but it's just something I'd never do. I thought it was poor taste, and he's a bitch for it. And I will never, ever root for Kyrie Irving again.
Wow. 50 years, huh?
I think they're playing Dan Gilbert. I would not be surprised if they hook up again as teammates in a couple of years. I think this is absolutely... They are controlling their destiny. They know exactly what they're doing. And I think this is a big fuck you to him.
Can I just speculate with you guys for a second?
No, sure. See ya. Gotta
Man, rough.
All right, I'm back.
I just feel like if LeBron bounces from Cleveland, I just feel like the rest of his career is going to be... I mean, I don't have a real problem with players chasing rings or anything like that, but I just feel like any team that signs him or he goes to, like, this is always going to be a factor throughout the rest of his career now. Like, he's really going to become the first journeyman superstar.
What, Shaq didn't?
Shaq did it, yeah, but, I mean, and look, maybe he really did it a lot outside of his prime, but... have we been given any evidence of LeBron even slowing down at this stage? Do you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like it's a little bit sad that if he leaves Cleveland, like he loses that sense of home a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like, maybe it's that last part of, that 90s NBA nostalgia, that part of a fan, where a player stayed with like John Wall obviously coming out and saying that, he wants to be a Wizard till he retire. Literally, the first thing went through my head was like, bullshit. Like, absolute bullshit. Let's wait for the losing to start. When you can't get past that second round of the NBA playoffs, like, let's see how loyal you are then. Like, I just feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just that last bit of nostalgia leaving the new generation.
I don't know. LeBron seems to be a different beast altogether. I mean, I think he's entrepreneur first, basketball player second. This is a guy who knows what he wants to do, what his image should be. This is a guy who had this plan from a very, very young age. And for him, it's about, being that billionaire athlete and having that legacy and owning a team one day and not being in control of it all, like not being a pawn for a franchise, but being able to be the draw card and the business is him. I think any move he does is going to be calculated, is going to be purposeful, and he's going to be in full control of it. And I don't think it changes his legacy. I really don't. I think, if anything, it just highlights that man was going to do whatever he did throughout his career, and he did it. And, whether or not he won rings, I mean, his the trips that he's made to the NBA Finals and the teams that he's carried on his back, it's outstanding. I'm not a huge LeBron fan, from a personality standpoint, and the decision and all that shit just bugs me. But, man, for what he's done on the court, it blows my mind.
You will be next year.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. I think that, that's a massive market. And, yeah, I think I will be next year. I totally agree.
We'll be back in the finals before too long, my friend.
I truly, in my heart of hearts, I'm convinced he's coming.
To the Lakers?
Yeah, me too. We're landing him and PG.
Jesus.
We're going back to the finals, I'm telling you.
You guys are going to be unbearable. Fuck, I might take that season off.
We'll just kick you off the bloody show. We'll just have to this bloody...
As a fan, though, Wayne, and, somebody who's obviously up on moves and gut feel as well as to what's going on out there at the moment, where else could you see him signing?
The Grizz.
Oh, that ain't happening. Grizz won't give up bloody Parsons for him. What are you talking about? Jesus Christ.
Nobody wants to go to the Grizz. Oh, sorry, Macklemore does.
Fucking hell.
Whatever his freaking name is, the rapper.
Yeah, look, it makes sense. Like, as far as like a business point of view, like the way the franchise is looking. I mean, I think a lot also rides on the Lakers' season this year, if that move happens or not.
Don't be silly, Wayne, please.
I'm just saying. I think a lot actually rides on having a good year. Not necessarily making the playoffs or anything like that, but like a big jump in progress.
Okay, so we'll probably win about, I'm going to say about 30 to 35 games, right?
Yeah, max, yep.
We had LeBron and PG, Lonzo, who else we got? Julius, Kuz, Clarkson, Contavious Caldwell Pope. We're winning 50-60. We're going back to the finals, I'm telling you.
Of course you are if you add those pieces. Fucking, I'm not debating that.
Don't worry about it. Well, don't worry about this bloody season because it doesn't matter how many games we win.
I'm just saying, mate. You can apply that to any fucking team in the league. What are you talking about? If you added Paul George and LeBron James. If you added Paul George and LeBron James to your team, of course you're winning 50 plus.
If you add them to the Nets, you're going to the finals?
In the East, yeah, probably.
No, don't be stupid.
Fucking probably.
Mate, we could win 10 games.
Who have you got to beat? You don't worry about Cleveland anymore because you are the new Cleveland. So Boston's your only real competition.
Boston will smash them.
Oh,
but just shut up for a moment.
I'm just
There's
saying,
no
mate.
teams out there with a young core like that we've got that you can add those two and straight away you go in the finals. We'll smash Golden State.
You guys
It'll
aren't.
be Golden State. It'll be
Right.
Golden State. Who?
Okay,
That's what
well,
it'll be.
look, let's put a pause on that conversation and wait for the
Let's not.
start of next season, and we'll lay down some slap bets, and we'll see who's
I'm
standing.
telling you now, ratings have gone up since we started talking Lakers.
All right. Anyway, let's get away from LA.
We should have a sponsored Lakers talk.
Why? Why,
Because that's when our ratings go up.
mate? Dreaming.
We'll speak to the big baller brand and we'll see if we get ZO2s on
Tell you
tour.
what.
All right, that clown.
Let's get Benson Auctions sponsoring us.
We could do that.
Benson's auction. I can't even say it. That's why we can't have it.
It's easy for you to say, yeah.
Wow.
Let's jump into Andrew Wiggins and what's happening in Minnesota right now. So,
What's happening?
well, Wiggins thinks he's a max player. Many of the fan base don't think he's a max player right now. Do you think he gets a max deal?
Yep. I think he's going to be great.
I don't think you should get max yet. It should be big. It should be very attractive, and it should be something that I would take in a heartbeat. But I don't think he's John Wall sort of money.
No, but I see him going the way of John Wall. Like, he's just going to bust out. He's that good. I love Andrew Wiggins.
I would totally agree. I totally agree. I think he's definitely going to have a blowout. I want him to take over the team. I want him to lead the league in scoring. I want him to snap out of his defensive lulls when he watches a couple of plays a game from the best seat in the house in the middle of the fucking court, and and just turns that switch. I know he's got it in him, but I don't know if it's his contract or not.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're going to offer him 150, is it?
Yeah. But I think first the owner wants to sit down and have a talk with him before he signs any sort of new deal. So, look, I think there's a lot of positives in Minnesota as well. Like, I think the fact that a deal was put forth for Kyrie Irving by Minnesota and Wiggins wasn't included in that deal. So I think that's a good sign, and that's a sign of faith in Wiggins. Do you know what I mean? I think that's a very good sign if you're a Minnesota and Andrew Wiggins fan. We touched on it a little bit, I think, last week, Stu, off air when we were talking about Wiggins. And look, the last thing I think you want to do is lose a guy like Wiggins by not paying him as well, because sure, he mightn't be the complete player now, but even still, on that squad that they've put together, he's still a 20-plus point scorer a game. And, you take that offense off that team, I mean, there's kind of two ways this could go. You could either buy all the pieces around him, your Jimmy Butlers, and even your benches with Crawford coming in. Like, it's either going to maybe hamper him a little bit as far as his development, or it's going to take the reins off and it's going to...
Vince has got ya.
What?
Vince has got ya.
What did I say? Oh, okay, whatever.
He's not happy, Benson. Whatever.
But
Well, sorry, we don't want to hamper
I
this.
lost my train. I lost my train for it. Stop smoking for the show.
There's one a show, man. Sometimes we're lucky we get 2 or 3, but there's definitely one a show.
Fucking hell. Anyway, there's no doubt about that. Wiggins lost the franchise tag. I mean, I think with Towns really coming to the forefront of that team, I would just want Wiggins to come out with a bit of a chip on his shoulder and take that mantle back.
I would love to see that. And you know who else would?
Who's that?
Joey.
Joey!
I think at the end of the day, Karl Anthony Towns is the man over Wiggins.
Yeah?
Yeah, I do. Don't get me wrong. I think if Towns wasn't there, I'd be saying Wiggins all the way. I think Towns has just got him pipped at the moment.
He kind of stole it off him. I think his arsenal he offers a lot more to that squad. I kind of feel like Wiggins can claim this back though. He can fight back. I mean, if he becomes a defensive stopper, I think offensively, I'd say offensively as far as putting the ball in the basket, I'd say he's better than Kawhi Leonard.
Ooh, yeah,
but it goes back the other way when you talk about defense and being a stopper. But you talk about potential, Vince. That's the potential I see in Andrew Wiggins. I see a Kawhi Leonard type. Do you know what I mean? He mightn't be as good as Kawhi Leonard, but he's definitely in that mold, or the potential to be in that mold. And to have an asset like that in Minnesota, I think they're crazy. Although he's not a max player yet, he's not playing at that level, they're crazy to let him walk.
No, I agree, but I also think a great thing, we all know it, having Jimmy Butler next to him playing, and Jimmy will get up his ass if he's not playing defense.
Massively, yeah.
He will push him, and it's got to be a good thing for Wiggins, because I don't think he's ever had that since he's come to the league. I just hope they can win 55, 60 games. I really do.
I think 50 plus should be an expectation if you're a Wolves fan. Yeah. I kind of just wish I could transplant Karl Anthony Towns' attitude and his mindset, drive into Wiggins. I think that would be the perfect beast, because Towns just looks like he gets it. Like, he gets the charisma that you need to be a franchise guy. He gets the scowl that he needs when he's on offense and defense. He gets, I don't know, there's something about Towns that I really want Wiggins to take over this team. I'd love him to be a 25, 28-point-a-game scorer. I truly think he has the arsenal to lead the league if he can flick the switch. But in terms of the two of them, Towns is the one who's got that in him.
He seems to have that it factor.
Yeah, he's just got it. Like, some of them do, some of them don't, and he has it. I don't know what it is, but if you were talking as to who out of that team you would put, on an interview panel to be on national television, or who do you would want to be the face of your franchise, it's going to be Towns every day of the week.
Yeah, that's true.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Say Irving's not traded, and the season starts and they get close to the trading deadline, and Wiggins is still not the defensive guy they thought he was going to be. Reckon there's a good chance that he gets thrown into the Irving deal?
No,
I don't. I just feel like the scoring punch at that position's too good in that Western Conference, man. One thing I took away from watching the Wolves play Golden State last year, especially that game where Wiggins had those couple of throws. He got blocked by McGee, then retaliated with the dunks and stuff like that. He just plays so much better pissed off. You know what I mean? Some players, they don't respond to that well. Like, they need to be calm, or they need to be like in some weird zone in their head. But he just seems to react a lot better and play a lot better when he's a bit ticked off. I just want the chip on his shoulder this year. I want him to be it's healthy. I want him to be a little bit pissed off at Towns for being the new franchise guy. I mean, he was there before Towns. I want him to have that competitive anger a little bit and just come out and just smash it this year. I just want him to bring it. It's his bring it year this year.
Yeah, look, I'm in his corner, man. I love Andrew Wiggins, and I'm hoping it happens.
Yeah, I think we'd all agree. I think you'd find a fan of basketball who doesn't want to see this kid succeed, and I think a lot of it's got to do with the fact that he was a number one draft pick, and he was basically shifted and punted for Kevin Love in the whole Kevin Love, LeBron James fiasco of that summer, and I think the worst irony in the world would be to trade him back to Dan Gilbert. Dan Gilbert doesn't deserve Andrew Wiggins.
No, that's true.
And while we're on the Timberwolves, I just want to wish my follically challenged friend Joey from Timberwolves Explosion on iTunes. Check it out.
Check it out.
A belated birthday. I think it was his 40th. No, it wasn't. It was about 36, 37, Joey. Looks 50.
No clue how old he is.
No, he's about 36, I think.
Happy birthday, Joey.
Looks 50, but...
don't we all?
Well, not me.
Definitely not me. I was just being facetious.
Oh, if everyone can see your Skype picture, mate, your modelling picture, it looks a treat.
Well, speaking about treats, last week, the NBL versus NBA exhibition games.
It's going to be fun.
Was announced. So, look, some people are a little bit pissy because it's not in Australia, and we're not getting the games up here.
Fucking coming here. They're not coming here. It's too far.
I agree. It's a little bit disappointing, but this is better than nothing. This is another step to that happening. So I think people just need to slow their roll a little bit on that. You know, like it's that I think that will eventually happen. Hopefully in my lifetime.
No.
Hopefully in my lifetime. But look, until then, I'll take this. So my only real things are, though, I feel like it should have been more of the top teams. You know, I can kind of understand Sydney being one of the squads because obviously Gaze was over there for summer camp with the Pacers, stuff like that. You like obviously build that relationship. So I mean, I can kind of get that. But you know, when a team like Illawarra or even the Breakers or someone like that, like I feel like our top teams maybe should have been missing.
It's because they want to promote tourism as well, and who the fuck wants to go to Perth?
Yeah, no, that's spot on. I mean, that's why you've got Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne. It's the only logical explanation. If you had to pick on talent, why would you send those three teams?
Yeah, I suppose that makes a lot more sense. I mean,
because if Perth should be there, like, but again, no one wants to go to Perth.
Do you think it might have been better, like, as far as... I mean, I just feel like we're going to get smashed in some of those, like, wiped on some of those games. Totally. Do you think it would have been better, the NBL, Vince, coming out, and we spoke about this last week, Stu, the NBL picking, like, an all-NBL team, like, picking three teams, and just, like, the best three team they could put together?
No, I like the clubs going over.
Yeah?
Yeah, I like it. It's good for the fans who support those teams. It's we know we're going to get... Those fans know that their team's going to get smashed, but stranger things have happened. We might be able to keep it close.
They're not going to keep it close.
No, I know that, but I'm just trying to give people some hope. Jeez. God damn.
Edit this out, okay? We're going to the hope cut, okay?
Okay, well, you know, we might keep it close for a quarter, the Kings, and, 5 minutes or so. But I'll tell you one thing, Benson, it won't hamper our efforts to get teams over.
You've been waiting to get it back in.
Oh, boy.
I was waiting for you to just slip it into Timberwolves talk.
That's the thing with you, Vince. You're just unforgiving. Fucking hell. One slip up mid-sentence and that's all we're going to hear about for 2 months.
Wayne,
2
you know I
months.
love you. Come on.
Mate.
You know I love you.
Mate, we've recorded...
It's all you two.
It's all in jest.
We've known each other long enough. I know your games.
How come when Benson says it, you don't get the shits, but when I say it, it's I'm an arsehole?
I didn't hear him say it. I was too busy on that.
It's a Sydney versus Melbourne thing.
Well, every week we hit the Facebook page, all caps courtside, and ask you guys, the fans, what teams and topics you'd like to hear about. We've got a few. I want to start off with...
Oh, I didn't see these.
Courtside faithful, New York Knick faithful, Philip Brown. He wants to talk about Gallo's punch, brain fart, or... Nah, it was a massive brain fart.
Well, hang on a second. Hang on. Being Italian, I've got to talk about this.
Uh-oh.
That's how we are, all right? That's exactly how we are. We'll punch you in the face and ask questions later.
Very cool.
It's that Italian temper, mate. It's just, you know, he's... Not only are we good lovers, we're very fiery people.
Oh, my goodness. Give me a break.
Okay, I'm modest.
Oh, we can cook too.
Yeah, total brain fart. Lucky it wasn't worse than it was. I think there's a lot riding on Gallo in LA this season with this new squad. And look, I liked Gallo in Denver, and Denver definitely looked like they were turning somewhat of a corner last year. So, I mean, this could be a pretty big year for him.
Yeah, Denver are going to miss him. I think it's a great role that they're going to utilise him for in LA, and something that they haven't had for a long time. I think he's going to be a very productive. I wouldn't be surprised if he's up in the up in the 18s or the 20s. I think they're going to use him a lot more. I think they're going to tweak with some rosters that get him essentially starters minutes. So I think he's going to have a massive role in LA. But learn how to punch, dude. If you punch right, you're not breaking any bones.
Right? You kind of punched him with the inside.
Maybe that's what Italians are known for, just wet punches.
Wet.
Oh, mate. I'll show you when I see you next time.
You promise?
Mm-hmm.
Bet you say that to all the boys.
No, humble Tom. Humble.
Phil also wants to know, what are your thoughts on the Session signings by his New York Knicks?
Good luck with him, Phil.
The problem with Ramon Sessions is that if he plays pass first point guard, he's pretty good. His assist to turnover ratio is always traditionally pretty good. But for some reason, Ramon Sessions sometimes thinks that he's, I don't know, Allen Iverson or something, and he just goes on these ball-hogging drives and these irrational shots, and I don't know, if you can get him to just play the friggin' point guard role, then he's okay as your backup. You know what you're going to get, but I don't know, with that roster and the lack of scoring that you guys might have, shit, if it goes to that weird mode that he switches, then yeah, good luck.
I'll say this, Phil. One positive is about 8 years ago he scored 40 points.
So he's due for another one.
He's due. He showed nicotine a thing or two.
I love that you're still
Nicotine's gonna
calling.
be all right.
I love the fact you're
Yeah,
still calling him nicotine.
Well, I have to give credit to Bill Simmons. I just like it.
Fair call.
Because I can't pronounce his name. I don't know if you can, but I can't.
No, I'm not even going to attempt it. You can barely speak English as it is.
Yes, we don't want to hamper that.
Our next question comes from Dan May, and he wants to know our thoughts on the new uniforms.
So far, I've liked everything I've seen that's been released.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you like the Cleveland
I've
one?
loved them. I've absolutely loved them. And Cleveland's were released today as well, and I really like theirs as well.
Yep.
What about Portland's?
What about it?
It looks the fucking same.
It's the same.
Yeah, but they don't have to change. It's always been cool.
You say cool, I say the same. Yeah.
I just love that they had a press release, and they had this press package, and they had this whole big thing around their logo change, and it's exactly the fucking same.
Exactly the same. Just change the material.
You got to look closely. Yeah, you do.
It's in the stitching. Guys. They use a 3-stitch
Did you
instead of 2.
Did you hear about Dan's pussy?
What?
Yes, yeah. I was going to put a shout out.
His pussy's back.
To Dan's pussy.
Yeah, he got his pussy back. Yeah, his pussy was looking a bit worse for wear.
Always.
So would yours if it was outside for a couple of weeks.
It's always nice when
we're very happy for him. His pussy's back. It's his little
look,
part of his family. So it's.
Look, guys, it's always nice when a courtside member gets a bit of pussy back.
Yeah, it was interesting that Facebook allowed them to put all those photos up of them hugging and kissing the pussy bit. Whenever I do that, it gets taken down.
That'll happen your Facebook account, I'll tell you that.
I've got so much editing to do.
No, you don't.
I love minisodes.
I'll tell you what, though, it was bigger than I thought it was going to be. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it was just the way that Michelle was holding it. Maybe she's got small hands. I don't know.
Oh, man. I need to get Dan to become a Lakers fan, I think.
Who does he follow? Is it the Clippers? Or is it the Thunder?
Thunder.
But he has a soft spot for the Clippers, right? Because of Blake Griffin.
Yeah, but he was a massive
Sonics fan.
Yeah, Sonics fan. So, and he had a soft spot for the Kings because of Chris Webber.
That's fair. Our last question comes from TJ Hollis, and he wants us to hear more Kevin McHale.
I love Kevin McHale.
Yeah, he's cool.
What does he want us to do with Kevin McHale?
He just wants us to talk about him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Okay. The sad thing is, I love Kevin McHale, and when we started getting the NBA over here, he was on the downside.
Yeah.
And he had that screw on his ankle, and he was running, with a big limp, and he was still serviceable, still pretty good, but he wasn't the McHale of old. But all these Jordan games I've got, and I always watch the Celtics Bulls because I just love watching those Celtics teams. McHale would just dominate in the post. It was so good. You don't get players like him anymore.
Yeah, no, I've only got obviously old YouTube clips and things like that I've seen, but you hear about people and their recollections of him and his footwork and the dirty work and the boxing out and the spacing. And, Bill Simmons dedicates a lot of time in his books and whenever he talks about, the greatest power forwards of all time. Kevin McHale's always been at the top of his list until probably the last, the end of sort of, I guess maybe the last 5 or 8 years or so of Tim Duncan's career, when everyone had to really sort of, say that this guy is the greatest power forward of all time, and it's inarguable. But, McHale, by all reports, was just an absolute beast, and most people put him in the top 5 of power forwards all time.
It's funny, this past week I've been watching a lot of stuff on KG and his time in Minnesota, his time in Boston, and they played that clip the other day of, I think it was KG had just gone back to Minnesota. They were playing against Houston, and Kevin McHale just lost his daughter, and that embrace at half court.
Yeah.
Man, I couldn't help but get teared up.
Yeah.
I just was like, man, like that bond they had out in Minnesota with, Kevin McHale and Timberwolves, like obviously like KG growing up with Kevin McHale, by his side, and it was just, man, just the respect level just jumped through the roof. And I just felt like even without that loss, I just felt like he got a bit of a bum steer out in Houston, and I'd kind of like to see him coaching again, but with more of it just felt like that Houston team was never really his.
It shits me he gets such a bad rap for his coaching. His record's pretty good. Gets a bad rap for his GM roles and at Minnesota, but he and Flip built that team that went to the was it the semi-finals?
Yeah.
And Houston, he won a lot of games as well. You're right. He just seems to cop it in the butt, and I don't know why. He's just, I really like him. I'd hire him as a coach in a heartbeat. I don't know why he gets a bad rap.
So would I, totally. It's completely unfounded. Those records with those teams and what he was able to build and what he was able to do, he definitely got thrown under the bus in Houston. He was the scapegoat for a lot of other problems. And, if you look at it purely from a win-loss point of view and other people's opinions of the guy, there's I don't think there's any real blame there, and he should be, I'd love to see him coaching again. Whether or not he wants to, I doubt, but I'd love to see him coaching again.
Well, earlier in the show, we spoke about like that dual role being a problem with Doc Rivers and the Clippers. I would like to see Van Gundy step away from coaching, take on the GM role, and a guy like Kevin McHale come in and step in, or even vice versa, even go in in a GM role. Like
Van Gundy just needs to coach because he sucks as a GM.
That team stinks. They need to do something.
Yeah, well, he built it.
Yeah, he sucks as a GM. He really, really does. I don't think there's any need for any coach to have that general manager's role. I mean, they talk and they confer and they confirm and they, it's not like they're not in the war room together and they're not discussing the dynamics of what they'd like to put on the court in a couple of months' time. I don't think there's any need for a coach to have that role.
Oh, did you hear about Byron Scott?
Oh, yes. He's done with coaching.
Yeah, he's not fooling anyone. He knows.
There's no offers.
No one's hiring him.
Yeah. I was just about to say, it doesn't count if no one wants to give you a job.
Jesus Christ. Go away, Byron Scott.
Yeah, that's like George Karl having a press release. I'm done. Yeah, really.
And, of course, you can catch all the courtside banter at the website, CRTSDE.podbean.com. Guys, there you'll find links to our Facebook page, All Caps Courtside. Of course, this is our Minisode, our free Minisodes. If you guys like what you hear and you want more courtside access, please head over to the website and sign up for our Season Pass. That'll get you more access to more shows, more banter, more madness on Australia's zaniest hoop show, the Courtside Podcast. Do you like that? I threw that in there.
Also, please have internet connection because that may hamper your ability to download this show.
Oh,
Here it comes.